Was it Andy Peter? No, Philip Schofield.
No, Philip Schofield. That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
with the little puppet thing.
Gordon the Gopher.
That's right. Yeah, you're
Good
just like him.
evening.
You should have
Yeah.
a puppet friend. Like, oh my gosh, because like our puppet friends could talk on either side of the like that.
Yeah.
We should do it.
Good evening, everybody. You haven't joined some weird, crazy puppet show. You have joined us in for a blether with Every Whiskey Shop. Once again, good evening. Whether you're joining us from YouTube or Facebook, I hope you're having a great evening. Good evening, Dave on YouTube. First off the mark to say hello. Yeah, I would just say I'm coming from the whiskey shop today. I've been kicked out of the house. Well, I've been kicked out of the house. So I'm here. We have a wine tasting at the shop, and the Aberdeen wine school, local wine school, Anna's hosting that. So I'm kind of here just holding the keys, and that's why I'm in a little cupboard. This is for those of you who know us at the shop. This is Annette's cupboard. This is her workspace. And you're just saying, I feel like Philip Schofield in the broom cupboard from those of you who are old enough or young enough to remember that. Talking of hand puppets, we had the Gordon the Gopher, the hand puppets. Have you seen the Little Brown Dog's new video?
Yeah.
The squirrel and the badger, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
I know. Did the puppy not get the badger in the end? At the end of the video, was that what she was?
I think I can't remember if it was the badger or the fox, but it certainly got one of them. If you haven't seen it, guys, check out. We talk about Little Brown Dog a lot, and normally
they're worth it.
It's always worth it. So check out the video. Funnily enough, that's what I'm going to pour tonight as one of my drams for tonight's Blether. The Nicnean STR Barrique. So let's get that in the glass. I've smelt it. I've had the tiniest sip. And actually, we've just confirmed with Andrew a tasting with Little Brown Dog in the shop for the 9th of June. So, guys, that's available online now if you want to come along, try some of their fantastic drams. Because we don't even get the chance to try them. They're only sold out and gone.
I don't think I've ever tried them other than the one they released for the whiskey shop because they don't stay on the shelf.
I know. So, get yourself a ticket for that. What's in your glass, Kat?
Well, inspired by the Oenologique tasting last Saturday, I have got Oenologique, that one.
Nice.
Yeah, that one.
Is that the core range AD?
Yes, it is. It is.
Super. So for you guys at home, let us know what you've got in your glass. It doesn't have to be whiskey, but we like to hear about anything you've got. So Dominic has gone for wild turkey, which is interesting because our guest tonight, Kristiane, has just been doing an American whiskey masterclass. So let's get her on and we will learn a little bit more about that.
Hi, folks.
There we go. Good evening. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. Good evening to you both. How has your days been?
Brilliant. Yeah, good.
Good.
It's Kat was telling me she was doing stock taking, so it's a bit exciting stuff there.
A whole day of counting things.
Too many numbers, definitely.
Yeah. As long as you've got stuff to count, though, I suppose you've got nothing to count. I suppose it could be a busy day if you've got nothing to count.
Oh,
yeah. If you see that would be easiest.
It would have been a lot easier. But yeah, it's done now, out the way. So
super. So Dominic's asking, he's going straight in with the questions. He's asking, how's the cat?
I hope he means your cat, not just me.
Is that for me or for Kat?
How's you, cat?
No,
he does. He does mean your cat. He does mean your cat.
The cat. So
the cat. Yeah, she's shut next door because she's been on a bit of a rampage today. We've had to move around and there have been glasses everywhere, vases everywhere, plants being dug up. So for the sake of some quiet, her hooligan energy is next door.
We've just kind of got used to animals popping up and Zoom and Teams and all that kind of stuff. It's not really a Zoom meeting unless somebody's dog or cat appears unannounced.
Is it an older cat or quite a young cat?
She'll be 4 this summer, but she looks and behaves like a kitten, which I'm here for. I love the rambunctious energy.
Nice. Oh, good stuff. I'm just looking through. We've got David Fackerson on YouTube. He's on the Murray McDavid 11-year-old Glengarry. You have to let us know.
Thoroughly approve of that choice.
Yeah, it's an Oenologique cask, which we're seeing a few of them coming out recently. It's that Hungarian wine cask coming out, which is quite interesting. Little Brown Dog actually had one in a Tormore not that long ago. So yeah, you have to let us know what you think of that, Dave. James has got a Bunnahabhain and Clarich in his glass. Excellent, good stuff. Sorry, David, we did start without you. Last week we were late, so David thought he might have a little bit of time to catch up. But no, we were on time today, which is excellent. Kristiane, what's in your glass tonight? What have you gone for?
Well, I have got 5 drams to see me through our chat, but sip don't go drinking. But I've started with Baines, which is one of my all-time favourite drams. South African single grain. I'm an absolute single grain nerd. But this, for me, is like one of the best value bang for buck whiskies you can possibly get, especially if you like single grain. It is very young, but it's just like sipping on like a vanilla ice cream, like Mr. Whippy vibe on the beach. So, yeah, going for it.
Absolutely. Slange. Cheers.
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 Good stuff. That is, Dominic was asking about the nickname. That's really nice. It's quite sweet.
What cask is it in? Did you see already?
It's SDR Barrique, so wine cask.
I really love what they're doing up at Knockmead. I feel like they're getting so much character into their very young whiskey. Really good cask management.
Yeah, and we discovered it was Dave Worthington's daughter who's kind of working on the brand side of things for them as well, which was
she's a cat as well, isn't she?
She is a cat as well.
Another cat.
I am not a cat person, but I'm surrounded by them, so I've kind of learned to live. I'm a dog person. I've got 3 dogs myself, so.
I was about to say, how could you not be a cat person? But if you've got 3 dogs, I think that would probably turn into more of a zoo than a household.
Yeah. One of my dogs in particular, Rhea, she follows Miley. She is very much not a cat lover, to the point that we had an appointment at the vet a couple of years ago, and she got up on the table, and her arches went up, her hackles went up, and she started this really weird kind of high-pitched growl. And we thought, my God, she's like terrified of the vet. What's going on? But we looked at what she was looking at, and there was a silhouette of a cat on the wall, and she was gunning for it. She was really like, let me at this cat. And it's like, my God, she was. Anyway, so no, cats I don't think.
Yeah, what I don't get is how they know that they're supposed to not like them. It's some like evolutionary baked in thing. But yeah, some people manage to make it work.
Yeah, it's like, how do I know that's not what I am? I don't know. Because she'd never met a cat. She'd never actually. She briefly had an encounter with one, but we didn't take her out and say, this is your enemy. You're not going to like any of these.
It's weird though, because my dogs and cats will love each other, but then the cats came first, the dogs came after. So I suppose like cats pretty much show you who's boss pretty quick. So maybe the dogs are just like, yeah, okay, you can have your space. I get it.
Yeah. See, cats are dicks. That's it.
I love their sass. They're so sassy.
Yeah,
cats are so affectionate as well though. They're so cats are affectionate. Like if they like you, they're affectionate.
Yeah. Well, only because they're wanting fed or something.
Well,
anyway, we're digressing, and this is Kristiane. This is what the Blether is about. We are going to talk about lots of things that won't include whiskey.
I love it. Bring it on.
Dominic has just put on. He's got 5 dogs, 1 cat, and a random number of chickens, and an undisclosed number of horses.
Oh wow!
My God, not all in the house, I hope.
I would also say, I would feel like of all of them, the horses are the ones you'd want to know how many you had because they take up the most space.
I can't remember. With horse people, though, once they have one, then it evolves into another one, and then you find you've got another one, and then you don't want to admit how many horses you've got because you realize you've got a horse problem. So I think that's going to be more the case with Dominic. It could be.
Could be.
So, let's get to know yourself, Kristiane. How did it all start for you in whiskey? What was your epiphany moment that said that this is a drink for you?
Oh my goodness. So I feel like so lucky that this is the case. So I was working as a journalist and I had never drunk whiskey in my life. My background was writing about confectionery and fashion and stuff like that. And I got a job on a travel retail magazine. And this was back in 2012 that I first drank whiskey. And I can't believe it was 11 years ago. But my editor at the time was like, you have to go and report on the Viking Line Whiskey Fair, the Cinderella Whiskey Fair, which for those who know, it's a pretty, I don't know, it's a lively affair is the best way to describe it. You go on the boat at Stockholm, you go round some islands, you come back. The car deck's turned into like a whiskey fair, basically. And you, go and try everything. There's an amazing disco. I am a huge fan of Eurovision. So the Eurovision vibes were strong on the boat. It was amazing. It is quite a sight to see, like hundreds of big, tall, blonde Swedish men just like rocking out to these like cheese pop tunes. But yeah, I went with Maxim Travel Retail at the time, which was a joint venture between Edrington and Beam Suntory. So, well, I guess Beam at the time, even they were together. So it was lots of Highland Park, lots of Macallan, lots of Lafroig. And one of the first whiskies I ever drank was some of the really high-end Macallans, which I'm not brand loyal at all, but I think it was just such an incredible opportunity to have that as your very first whiskey, not shots at a party, not overindulging down the pub with your friends. It was literally like the brand ambassador was utterly phenomenal, and it just opened my eyes to this world of flavor. And since then, I came back from the trip after having begged my editor not to go. I was like, I don't want to go and drink with loads of men. That's not what I'm here for. And he was like, you have to. I came back and then went on every single trip I could. I interviewed every single person I could, and it was just the best, I think, learning experience possible. And everyone in the industry is so generous with their knowledge. I just fell in love with it completely, literally overnight on that overnight boat trip.
Wow. So I mean, we find a lot of people are whiskey lovers with a passion for writing, so get into the writing side. You were the other way around. You had the passion for the writing and the journalism and discovered whiskey as part of that job.
Yeah, 100%. And I hadn't even really planned to go into writing and journalism. It's one of those classic things where I just declined a place at university. I didn't know what to do. So I taught English as a foreign language for a while and then decided I should probably get a proper job. Somehow got a job on this chocolate magazine and then it went from there. So I feel beyond lucky to have fallen into this. And I absolutely love what I do. And I can't believe I get to write about whiskey, communicate about whiskey, educate, just tell stories about it. It's just incredible.
It's not just whiskey either, though, is it?
So whiskey is my first spirits love. And I think now probably 80-85% of what I do is whiskey. But I love anything distilled, basically. I also love wine, but that's like a hobby, not something for work. But anything distilled, I love writing about, educating about. But whiskey will always have that place in my heart.
Kat, were you going to say something there, Kat, before I jumped in?
I was going to say, I can't believe I got to the age of 37 and not realise that you get chocolate magazines. Like, I feel like I've been under a stone.
It is really fun, but it's very nerdy. It's like the processing and packaging. So a bit like a very dull Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Like,
like without Oompa Loompas.
No
Oompa Loompas.
No Willy Wonka, no Oompa Loompas, no golden tickets.
No golden tickets. But a lot of deliciousness, a lot of samples. So, I'll still take it.
Well, you can combine the two, though, because many places do whiskey and chocolate. So I suppose you've got a sort of a knowledge base in both. So, you can count it from both angles.
Yeah, and actually one of the first things, this is just a very silly anecdote off the side of it, was a whiskey and chocolate pairing where we made truffles and filled them with whiskey. And then for some reason, I don't know why, I didn't take them with me at the time. And the next time, I think it was like later that week, I saw the person who was working for the brand was on our way to Islay for another press trip, which was, again, just an incredible experience. But I wasn't allowed to take them back on the plane coming back from Islay because they were so strict. Anyone who's done that journey will know you cannot sneak anything through, not a chance. So I stubbornly stood and ate every single chocolate at the security. That was when the two worlds truly met.
I hope you stared down the sort of airport staff while you were doing it as well.
I'll show you. and hopefully that it'll come back up on the flight either.
No, luckily not.
I can imagine. Oh, just shoving it.
Yeah.
The last bit of chocolate in there. I know there's a great story about. Have you met Robin Lang? You'll have known Robin Lang, do you?
I know who he is, but I don't think we've ever met, unfortunately.
He's got a great story. He's done a few tastings with us in Verona, both online and in house, and he's got a great story about the Uisce Babal that Bruichladdich distilled, the 4 times distilled, insanely strong whiskey, and there's a huge press release about it, and the distillery invited loads of journalists over from all manner of different newspapers, and they all got a sample of this whiskey to take home with them. But of course, they'd all flown over, and Robin took the boat. He was the only one. He couldn't afford. He said he was too poor to afford the plane, so he took the boat over. So when everyone else got to the airport, they had their whiskies or their spirit confiscated and probably not discarded of the proper way. I'm pretty sure that it would have been kept in some pockets. But so he reckons he's got the only surviving bottle off the original launch of this. It was a massive hoo-ha because it was distilled to such a strength that it shouldn't have been legal, and there was kind of health implications saying, "Oh, this is crazy! What you do making the whiskey this strong?" And this was just coming off the still. Obviously, it was going to be cut down before going into the cask and all that. But so he got the only bottle off the island. So the joys of being poor sometimes.
I mean, it's so funny, isn't it? And I think, very nerdy news story aside, like it will change with the liquid you can take, thank goodness, because I mean, how many times have people been traveling and you've not been able to bring your whiskey back, or you want something to bring as a gift the other end? Like, the world of sharing whiskey will be much richer for that, I think.
I hope so. Yeah.
Talking about high strength ABV, I understand you're quite a fan of a cask strength whiskey. Is that right?
Me, yes. Oh my goodness. So what have I got lurking here? There's an Ardbeg I'm gonna hopefully get to taste later, depending on timing and stuff. But I just think cask strength whiskey is magical. I mean, I'm sure you guys will agree. It's such an expression of that distillery, a snapshot in time. It's like a fingerprint. Like, you're never going to have that again. Once it's gone, it's gone. It always feels, I don't know, just incredibly special to drink single cask. Obviously, you can have cask strength whiskies that aren't single casks, but and also I think you kind of get multiple whiskies for your buck, because you can add different amounts of water, get a different flavor experience each time, and I think don't be scared of high strength whiskey would be what I would say, because just take a little sip and then just add water and see how you go. But it doesn't have to be burny. It doesn't have to be scary. I think it's just magical. Yeah. No, what about you both? Are you cask strength fans?
Definitely. Yeah. I do like to dip in and out. I try not to drink exclusively cask strength, because I think if you do that, you lose the joy of maybe a 45, 46 or something like that. You need to keep yourself aware of these, because this is what we sell most of, that kind of 46%, 48%. But yeah, what I love about it, as you say, that natural cask strength is, for me, it's a blank canvas, and people who, like say, don't be scared of it, because you can always add water to it. You can take it down to your strength. And if you drink whiskey at 46% or even 40%, that's absolutely fine. But you can still do that with a cask strength. You just add the water yourself. I
can't remember who it was who taught me this, and I'll try and do it in a second, but it will probably end up in a complete mess. But you can just have a sip of whiskey and have a tiny sip of water and almost mix it in your mouth as well, and completely avoid potentially drowning it. So that was a game-changing moment for me, I think, realizing that you can literally taste before you water.
We kind of recommend that trick at tastings, because 90% of the time the whiskies are all pre-poured. And we have had the occasion somebody's added a splash of water into their glass, and I preferred it without. So that's exactly one of the tricks we ask or say to people to do, is take a sip of the whiskey, take a sip of the water. It won't be exact, but it'll give you an idea of what the water is going to do. And even virtually at home, when they have the little samples, don't pour the whole sample out. Put a little bit, try it without water, try it with water, and then you know what to do with the rest of your sample.
Definitely. And I think always, if you're nosing and tasting, always give it a go first, because you just never know. And also, it's always fun to taste it with water as well, because as you were saying, you get a completely different dram very often. And yeah, I think that's something. It's a great myth, isn't it? Don't add water to your whiskey, but it's so much easier to nose it if there's a little bit in there.
It's one of those things that, like, every tasting you do, there's always one or two people that say, water, no, why would you do that? And then you get them to do it, and like, just the difference they know it's one or two drops. Yeah, it always surprises people, doesn't it?
I completely agree. And I think there's so many things that we've almost like grown up with where it's like, oh, older whiskey's better, darker whiskey means this. It's like, no.
I noticed that about your Instagram. You're sort of breaking down sort of preconceptions or misconceptions in the whiskey world, like, you know, darker's older, or smoky, scary, or, you know, don't mix whiskey and stuff. But yeah, these are just such old-fashioned ideas that really we should be challenging now.
Definitely. And I don't know about you guys and people watching, but I feel so lucky to be drinking whiskey and to be working whiskey at this time where we understand so much more about it, and it's so much more democratic. Like one of the drams I've got here is just like simply a Jameson, because I love a Jameson and ginger ale. Like that's one of my all-time favorite things to drink and one of my all-time favorite ways to have a whiskey. So yeah, gone are the days where you just have to sit there with your dram and nose it, and no ice, no water, none of this. And,
in a smoking jacket in a library, probably.
Nothing wrong with a smoker jacket
with a flat cap.
But they're optional. Bring a smoking jacket if you like. If you don't.
I feel like a fraud because I don't smoke, but hey. Yeah, I mean,
nothing wrong with a blazer.
Nothing wrong with a blazer. No. Jameson's was the first whiskey I kind of drank regularly. And me and my friends when we went out in Aberdeen, we always drank Tennants because that's what every young guy kind of drank. The kind of council lager of Scotland. And then we ended up in an Irish bar for our last orders in live band. So we all felt we had to drink something Irish. And this was before I'd kind of been introduced to Scotch. And it was, you know, Jameson's a load of ice because none of us liked whiskey. And a half pint of Guinness, and that was our kind of last orders. And one night the bar actually ran out of ice, so we're like, "Oh God, we're gonna have to drink this stuff neat." And that was kind of my first eye opener. I was like, "Actually, this is not bad." I was probably 3 sheets to the wind at the time, but it gave me the idea of let's try this neat more often. And then it just kind of opened up, and then I went to try different whiskies, and that was kind of the start of my journey. So it's good to have, and I like a Jameson's now and then. I don't get the chance to drink it very often because I'm always intrigued to try new stuff. But it's good to go back. It's kind of like, for me, Glenfiddich is something quite similar. It's a drink that it's very easy to have, it's very easy to mix, but it's also very easy to forget about and overlook, because it's one of those that you think, oh, I can buy that at any time, or I can try it. And you say that so often that you don't actually do it.
It's so interesting what you're saying about that with some of the bigger names, because you're completely right, but I think these brands are big for a reason. They've got so much heritage and they're so good, and also like it's so much fun to circle back and see what they're doing. Is there anything new out? Are they doing anything interesting with casks at the moment? And I think inevitably the answer is yes, and I'm always so pleasantly surprised when I go back to like an old favorite.
I was sitting with Glenmorangie was the whiskey that got me into whiskey because my grandpa always had it. But it was one of those bottles that your grandfather, like all grandfathers had, either had a Macallan, a Glenfiddich, or a Glenmorangie in their cupboard. So it was one that I remember, you know, because I got into whiskey, I thought I'll buy a bottle of Glenmorangie because it reminds me of my grandpa. And I didn't drink it for years and years just because, you know, like Mike said, there's other things to try out there. And I got back into it because like their whole branding changed and like all their sort of adverts changed, and they were really beautiful and had those like floral sort of branding things. And I kind of revisited the whiskey. I thought you kind of fall in love with it again just because it's been that big gap between the last time you tried it. So it's all those sort of memories and things. So yeah, no, I love that one as well.
Did you drink whiskey with your grandfather Cat?
He would give me what's called a dippy finger. So like my job was to sweep out the greenhouse. So he kept a beautiful greenhouse. His garden was like Mr. McGregor's garden in Beatrix Potter. So I would sweep out the greenhouse, and like the end of a summer's day, he would have a dram to reward himself, and I would get my finger in it, so a dippy finger, and just that lovely sort of. I love the smell, I love the taste. You don't really get the alcohol; it's just that sort of whiskey flavors. But that's kind of what made me fall in love with whiskey. That sort of snug, cozy feeling of just being content and being safe, and being with my grandpa. So yeah. It's nice.
Oh, I love that. That's such like a gorgeous story that really sums up, I think, I don't know, something I always think about with whiskey is that sort of like community, like family type vibe. And yeah, amazing.
Definitely. It's such a community, the whiskey world. You were saying that about when you started in journalism, that everybody just wanted to share stories and knowledge. Like the whole whiskey world is just like that. It's like this sharing of knowledge, sort of people wanting you to try drams. You know, nobody's very secretive or possessive. It's like, try this dram. You haven't had that one. I can't believe it. Try this one. The whole whiskey world's good fun. It's like a little mini happy mafia.
It is. And I've really found that, like, obviously, like, I get to ask some of the big companies like questions about their sales and all this stuff sometimes. But what I found is on the production side, and you would have heard this countless times, everyone always helps each other out. If something's broken, the distillery down the road will lend you what you need to fix it. But I've also found, interestingly, slight tangent, recently there's so much collaboration around sustainability and people sharing ideas, sharing best practice, sharing what they're doing. And that's just something that is, I think, a real modern take on, the old school, our mill's broken, can we borrow something to fix it? And it's very forward-looking, very collaborative. And I can't think of many other industries that's the case.
Not at all. I mean, we hear it time and time again. And, anytime we have somebody who's in the industry, it's like, I went to a festival and got to try everyone else's, although they're competitors, everyone very quickly realizes that that there's enough whiskey there, or there's enough people to try all the whiskeys, and you're not going to miss out on a sale just because the guy across the hall from you is selling his whiskey or her whiskey, and everyone kind of supports. And if you haven't got a bottle for everyone else to try after the show, then that's when you start to get left out of things.
Yeah, I think as well, like, whiskey drinkers, speaking for myself, but I'm sure many people, we just love whiskey. We're not like, I don't know, I think you were saying grandparents, and maybe in the past people were like a Glenfiddich person or a Glenmorangie person, or maybe a couple. Now I'm looking at the whiskies over there, like, it's so great to have like as many of them as possible and to celebrate as many of them as possible. And it isn't a zero-sum game at all. If you've got somebody who really loves whiskey, they're going to want to try more whiskey, right? So it'd be very short-sighted to try and like hem in like your customer.
I guess the idea of your whiskey, if you want people to try your whiskey, your idea is to get them hooked on the drink. The industry of whiskey is a product rather than Glenmorangie, Glenlivet, Macallan, whatever it might be. Like, if you get people into whiskey, and they get their friends into whiskey, that's when the journey starts, and they will inevitably try. I think it's more, as you said before, where we are now as an industry, it's all about trying new things. And we're all lucky enough to be in a position where we can, it's very hard. We get asked so many times, what's your favorite dram? What's your favorite distillery? What's your go-to? And honestly, it's hard to pick a go-to because there's so many out there. I very rarely have a bottle that as soon as I'm finished, I'll replace.
Yeah.
With the same liquid. It's like, I've run out of my Glendronach 12-year-old. I'll buy another one. So I've always got that because I always know there's something else that I might want to have instead.
Yeah. Do you know what? That's so true. I'm just trying to think if there's any that I kind of stick to. I don't know about you guys. I almost have like styles that I'm like in the mood for at the moment. So like single grain at the moment, I think it's just me being really optimistic. Summer is coming, although I look out the window and it's so grey. So this is going to be replaced as soon as that's finished because I just love the summeriness of single grain. But as long as like I've got some, solid sherry stuff, some wine casks, some peat going on, like it definitely isn't like distillery centric, but it is lovely, I think, to have a spectrum of drinking experiences.
Do you find that kind of, you mentioned that about the sherry cask or a peaty one, do you think that is overtaken regionality as a key factor for drinks, for people's choice of drinks?
Oh, that's such a good question. I'd be really interested to hear what you both think on this as well. I would say yes, but, or yes and, I think there's going to be a bit of a lag time before the general wider whiskey community maybe thinks of the fact that you can get peaty whiskey from Speyside, you can get unpeated whiskey from Islay, because I say this while really not wanting to do a disservice to like the centuries of history and the centuries of tradition that different producing regions have. That said, before the advent of clean fuel, most whiskies would have been peated, so it only goes back so far. But I think brand Islay is so dominated by peat, brand Speyside is so dominated by fruit, for want of, you know, massive generalizations, that I think it will be a little while before, I guess, flavour agnosticism, one of the better word, really runs through. But for me, I'm very much led by flavour rather than region, and I think we're going to see that happen more and more. What do you guys think? What do you guys find when you're chatting to people? And indeed, what's it like for you?
I think it depends. There's a certain age group of people that can't see past a certain number in a certain region. So if I had a pound coin for every time somebody said, I want a 21-year-old Speyside or an 18-year-old Speyside, and they won't see anything other than that. So you kind of try and show them, or like, as you know, they come in and say, well, you know, I want to try something different, and you show them something, and they say, oh no, have you got any Macallan? Or, which is fine, you know, that's a good whiskey, but it's like, you know, you after something different, we're back over. That's not all the time, but there's definitely that still exists. So yeah, I was doing a whiskey tasting the other night, and the person next to me on the table said, don't let her give you any knowledge statement. It has to be in sherry and it has to be from Speyside. I was like, all right, okay, so that just rules out about 5 of the whiskies that I've got here, actually. So I was like, well, thank you for your input there, but I think that's your taxi. But yeah, I find that we do get this quite often. I don't know about you, Mike, but I do notice it quite a bit from the 2 jobs that I do, that there is still this sort of misconception that to be good, it has to be Speyside. It has to be a minimum of 18 years old, and it has to be a dark colour.
I think what we've, you know, being a shop and not being in a tourist area, a lot of the people who are coming into the shop are buying for someone else. They're buying for granddad or mom or something. You know, it's a gift. So they've done a little bit of research and they've looked in the cabinet or they've asked the question, and you know, what's your favorite? Okay, so he drinks Macallan, he drinks Glenfiddich, he drinks Glenmorangie. So that's kind of all they know, and that's what they're targeted on. So we do find, in that kind of sense, I understand why somebody would want a Speyside. Is that, well, he always drinks Macallan, but I would like to try something different. So if you mention a Glendronach, which would be for me a natural fit, but it's not Speyside. What have you got Speyside? And it's, you know, so we just kind of have to guide them that way, because, you know, you don't turn around and say, don't be bloody stupid. You know, you don't know anything about whiskey, you're definitely having this. You know, you want to welcome them in, and you say, look, okay, well, that's fair enough. Let's take you over to a Tamdhu or a Glenfarclas or something like that. So you're looking at both kind of sides. But the person, you know, the kind of the drinker is so well educated now, I think, and is able to find out a lot more very quickly, that they're open to that kind of change in, you know, wine cask. And, you know, wine cask was never really a thing commercially, brand wise. People, wine casks were probably used quite often, but we never really shouted about it. So there's so much experimentation, so much new stuff going on. You know, peated cask. The whiskey's not peated, but the cask was a formerly peated cask. Things like this is opening so many doors that I think regions are almost or could very well be obsolete in the next 10, 50. Apart from the marketing side of things, I think it's very important in that sense. I did a tasting last night, actually, at one of the local country houses hotels, and it was for a group of Norwegians, and one of them asked, he says, I always have a selection of a lowland, an Islay, a Speyside, so that I've got a range of choice. And she goes, what would be your recommendation? Am I doing that right? And he goes, well, you're not doing it wrong, but have you tried cask flavors? Because that probably will give you much more. Because the chances, you know, for example, you have a Macallan, a Glendronach, and a Glengoyne, I suppose, you know, this version on the lowland. You know, that's 3 very similar cask styles, so they would taste quite similar, but 3 different regions or 3 different areas completely. So there's very little diversity there for me.
Yeah, I'm so inclined to agree with what you're saying. I think there's an interesting line to be walked between what's relevant now and what's been relevant in the past. and what like people today really care about. I'd be really interested to hear from people watching on this, because for me, what's important is the production of that whiskey. So how it was made, casks, maybe a bit of fermentation geekery as well. Maybe some, let's talk about the barley and the provenance of the barley. You know, maybe these kind of things are really interesting. Where it's made, I think, has some relevance, because obviously distillery character is super important. But whether that distillery, unless you're going to argue that there's very strong terroir influence, which, you know, could be, could not be. I think the regionality aspect is less and less important, but that isn't the case for everybody. And actually, if we want to make whiskey relevant to as many people as possible, maybe there is a set of storytelling that we need to keep there. But in terms of flavour profile, completely, like you can get all kinds of whiskies from everywhere. And beyond Scotland, we can see it, right? Like the whole American single malt category is so thrilling and so exciting. So you're going to have whiskies that in some ways could taste very much like Scotch, but they're made on the other side of the world. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. We had Mark Rainey on a few months back, so we've done the terroir. That debate got quite excited. So we won't go to terroir. I certainly think there's a sense of place in the whiskey world. I'm actually reading Dave Broom's book, A Sense of Place, at the moment, which is really interesting and a good read. Highly recommend it for anyone interested in that side of it. I'm just going to jump onto the comments and see. David Muir has asked.
David, thank you for your comment about me still drinking with my finger in a glass. Thank you, David. That's not how I drink my whiskey anymore.
I wasn't sure what he meant, but
my dippy finger. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, dippy finger is what he's going on about. Dave Muir is also saying to Kristiane, surely it has to be Sherry. With a name, I suppose, like Kristiane Sherry.
Have you seen the study that correlates people's surnames to their job choices? So it's an actual thing. It exists.
Is it really?
Yeah. So I can't remember the psychological, like the term for it, but there was a study done into it, and there's quite a lot of people whose actual jobs relate to their surname because they've been influenced by it over the years. So like Usain Bolt, okay, I've run dry. Kristiane Sherry.
I
Mike
like
from
that. Usain Bolt. I'm gonna like, yeah, that means a lot.
It's a true fact.
So does that mean I'm going to make a career out of getting beheaded by Tudors? Then is it?
I hope not, because we need you around for all things whiskey. So do keep your head if you can.
So that's quite interesting. Actually, I never thought of that, but you do see it quite often, I suppose.
I wish I could think of more examples, but there's definitely a lot more examples.
The Rock, he's a wrestler called The Rock.
Not sure that's his given name, but we can put it on the list. It's things like like Dr. Bones and things like people like it's things like that.
Yeah, and I mean, don't think I'm being rude here, but is Sherry your last name, or is that a writer's pseudonym?
So interestingly, it's up for debate at the moment. So I was born at Kristiane Henny. I got married. I'm now divorced, but I really like the name Sherry. But I think I will definitely revert to a different name at some point.
That's the bother. Once you take that name, it's hard to get rid of, isn't it?
It's a good name. It's a good name. But I think the benefit is there aren't very many other Kristianes out there. So that's helpful.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Good. Rick is joining us once again from San Francisco. It's about 11 o'clock in the morning over there. And he's wondering if anyone, if you're watching, Kristiane, Kat, you guys can answer this as well. Is anyone experimented with different waters added to the same whiskey? So I assume not from a distillery point of view, but from a drinking point of view, had a whiskey and then tried it with tap water, bottled water, carbonated water, mineral water, tonic water, I suppose.
I have so many thoughts around this, not from a scientific base especially. So I'm going to let you guys chime in first.
So my initial reaction when I read that was we had Dave Worthington has just popped up and said Boutique Dave made for boutique whiskey. Absolutely. Going back to the name.
Actual facts.
There was a company, or there is a company, Ushka Source, that bottles water from 3 different wells in 3 different areas. So that's an interesting experiment, kind of scientific experiment. And I don't know if anyone's heard of them or done that side of things. For me, the Isla water is very acidic. And there is definitely a difference in that. The other 2, I'm not so sure. But certainly, where the water comes from, I think might. The problem is nowadays that all water is treated once it comes out of the spring or out of the well. So it kind of neutralizes probably a lot of that minerality that might be there.
Plus, if you're adding water before to get it down to like a sort of, percentage, it's, water coming from head office, wherever your whiskey goes. So a couple of drops of Highland water is maybe not going to bring out much character if you've put quite a lot of sort of,
the romantic bonny banks of Loch Katrine. Yeah.
Psychology helps though. If you believe that it's, being fished out by a Highlander up to his knees in, a bog in the hills, then that helps you enjoy your whiskey, then it's probably absolutely it's not wrong.
David said just to watch out for dead sheep. If you're getting it from the water source, straight from the water. Yeah.
It definitely adds character.
Yeah. I was talking with, I think it was Brendan when I was at Deanston recently-ish, and there's some other people as well, and I really want to explore this more. They were talking about different mineral contents at like sort of the mashing stage and how that can really make a difference. So that's one part of it, which I am absolutely not qualified to dig into, but it does make complete sense to me that the makeup of your water at that stage where it hasn't been deionized or not to the same extent could be really interesting. But yeah, I think I did a whiskey tasting once where somebody had this whiskey that was this water that was meant to really cleanse your palate in between. And it really did work. It felt really heavy. I think they'd done something with the ionization content again. Science is not my strong point. But also like whiskey and soda is such a thing. I'm sure if you had different soda waters, like with the tonic waters are all different. And I think, just play around with it. But I am really fascinated because obviously, to your point, all water's been treated. So to a point, it is all the same. But I think if you're going to get really, really nerdy at different stages of production, there will be differences. And I think if you're playing in that game of like tiny flavor tweaks, it would be so interesting to delve into it further.
Yeah. From a production point of view, absolutely. As well as, I don't think anyone's done that kind of level. Not to my knowledge, anyway. Guys at home, if you know.
Yeah, I think some distilleries have experimented with production waters. They'll take it in from other sites and run it through just to see the difference that actually does make. I do know all that happening.
Yeah, definitely. And I think somebody asked me once if I wanted to judge a water competition, and I was like, really not. Like, you get used to tasting like certain things. Like I would never judge a wine competition. I do not have anywhere near enough knowledge, but judging a water competition, I'd be like, wow, you would really have to concentrate for that. That's a tough gig, I think.
Judging a water slide competition might have a bit more appeal.
That would be much more fun, right?
A water pistol competition.
I'm here for that one.
Yeah.
In terms of like your writing, if that's something you're interested in, say the water, is that something as a freelance journalist you would just maybe go and pursue? And then, I don't know, how does that work? Do you pitch that to like whiskey magazines and things and see if they would take that on?
Yeah. I've actually literally just written down, I've got pen and paper. Never do anything without a pen and paper. That's a bit of life advice that I've had along the way. To dig into this a bit more, because I think it would be really interesting. So what I tend to do, my process is get an idea, do a little bit of research, see if it's got legs, and then pitch it. Because I think we're incredibly lucky that we've got such a rich and diverse like industry of publications. So, Whisky Magazine, Oenologique, all the big retailers have blogs, even the business-to-business publications I absolutely love writing for, because I think people forget that, I mean, my background's B2B back in the day with the confectionery and on from there, spirits business. But, even people who work in the industry are humans. I would read some of the trade magazines for fun with a consumer hat on, and we have such, like you mentioned Dave Broom in his book, so many excellent writers and commentators. Obviously, there was a big debate recently, some people may have seen, about whether you can be too tied to a brand or too close to a brand, and when journalism becomes marketing and independence of judges and vice versa. I'm not really bothered about that, because I think it's a community. Content creation is a thing, journalism is a thing, all these different subdisciplines can exist side by side. We can just work with editors, pitch amazing stories. Like, yeah, it's great. So many different ways of communicating and sharing the love of whiskey.
That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Rick's popped on just a follow-up to his original point. I did try using a bottle of Perrier where he let it go flat and added that mineral water to some smoky Isla whiskies and got more of an earthy note. I guess as well, so much of whiskey is subjective that it would be hard to put any of that into fact, wouldn't it? One thing I always say to the guys who are joining me for a tasting from home is, if you're using tap water, pour it at least half an hour before you need it to let it settle, let it come to temperature, and just get that initial blast of chlorine off. We're quite lucky where we are, and throughout Scotland we've got quite fresh tap water. But if you're in a built-up, even Aberdeen, you can taste the difference in tap water to us in Inverurie to Huntly, or even further out in the sticks. The quality of tap water would make a big difference. So if you're in a built-up area, I'd certainly recommend pre-pouring the water or getting bottled water for your tastings.
I think that's such good advice. And the temperature piece as well. Oh my goodness. So again, absolutely do whatever you want with your whiskey. Adding ice to whiskey, completely valid. This is no slight on that. But if you're adding something at that cooler temperature, it's going to numb everything down a little bit. So if you're tasting it with water to taste all the nuances, definitely go at room temperature, or you're going to miss out on quite a lot, I think. Oh no, we've lost him. What's happened?
Mike's disappeared.
I'm back now.
His internet is so in and out all the time. Either that or Net's come to claim back our office, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. He's been booted out. Here he is.
Mike, did the net come and take our office back?
I have no idea what happened there.
It's usually my internet that disappears halfway through. I thought you were going to leave me to fly solo for the first time. I was like, oh no, panic mode, what do I do?
Yeah, well, let's throw you into the deep end. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Great. So I am back. Sorry, Kristiane, you were talking about the temperature of water, I think.
Just that literally ran its course, pardon the pun. Just saying that, just make sure that you're not adding anything too cold if you're really trying to get to the nuances, because it will just dull everything down a little bit. And that is said with absolutely no shame. If you want to add ice to your whiskey, do it. But yeah, if you're tasting it in detail, keep it room temperature.
I always tell people ice is fine, but if it's a new whiskey to you, try it first without the ice, and then add your ice once you get used to it after that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do the bottles behind you have been taken away, Mike? What happened?
I don't know.
You went blank for a couple seconds as the whiskey's missing.
It's a heist.
It's a heist.
Whiskey heist.
I like this from Dominic, who's watching on YouTube. My brother came up from London and asked if the tap water was drinkable.
What?
His brother came up from London and asked. So Dominic lives in Inch, which is not too far away from here, but it's very much
where all the best people come from, Dominic.
Yes, almost. But yeah, so his used to drinking London tap water, or regarded it as undrinkable. So he was asking if the tap water in Inch was drinkable.
Probably the most delicious tap water that they've ever tasted, I imagine, based in the city.
Also, makes you look very youthful, Dominic. Just saying.
Inch tap water.
Yes. Who would know I'm actually 56? I think he had another question. I think he was asking a question about whether Kristiane was still involved with Atom.
Atom Brands. Are you still involved with Atom Brands, Kristiane?
No, I'm now completely freelance, which is both terrifying and completely joyful. I love the team at Atom. They're fantastic. And I wrote a couple of pieces to their blog last year for Master of Malt. So yeah, not involved in any way other than that I support them and enjoy working with them when that comes up. And obviously really love doing pour and sip with them as well. So yeah, long history of working with them. Absolutely adore the team. But now I am just me and me alone.
You do your 3 whiskies in 60 seconds on your Instagram.
Yes. Yeah. I've got a backlog of about 3 I need to get out. I absolutely love 3 whiskies. It's a challenge, but it's really great as well because we tend to focus on, I can just see the cat trying to get back into the room. Someone mentioned her earlier. She's alive and well, being live. But yeah, it's just a really fun way of tasting what's new, what's coming out, what's interesting, and yeah, just having fun with it, doing it in a bit of a new, punchy, speedy as possible way. But obviously,
I know people ask you, Mike, a lot about tasting notes and how you come up with different tasting notes. Do you struggle, Kristiane, or is it something that comes quite easy, or do you kind of like? Well, I know, Mike, you told people that you kind of just taste everything and then try and remember what you've tried, like what you've eaten or tried, and keep a backlog in your brain of like taste and smells. Is it something similar you would do?
It's more of a memory thing rather than a talent thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I find it quite easy to do. And it's so funny because I remember even as a child, I would pick out different things that would really annoy my mum. One example being, I'm obsessed with Marmite. Loved it completely, always have done. But if the Marmite jar had been open a day too long, I could taste it. I'd be like, Mom, the Marmite's been open too long again. And she's like, you ate it yesterday. What's wrong with it? But like, it tastes like metal. It tastes like blood, all of this. And like, it would, honestly, things like that, different types of like butter or spread, I'd like be really picky about. So yeah, I've always been quite fussy with flavor. But now it's really, really helpful because the issue with 3 whiskies is you're trying to pare it back so much to fit it in. I just think it's a joy. And I think when people are like, what do I need to do to get better at it? My question would be, what do you want to get better at? If you're enjoying your whiskey, don't stress out about it. You don't need to get 50 flavor descriptors for one whiskey to enjoy it. You're not better than someone else if you can name all these individual tasting notes. Like, it doesn't matter, just enjoy it. But I also think if there is something you want to dig into, then definitely keep almost like tasting notes, practice. It's like any other skill. I think people can have a more or less sensitive palate for sure, but that doesn't mean you can't train yourself. You can get these things in your memory bank. It's like when you're learning a foreign language. I did German at school. Every time you learn something new and you recall that word, you're increasing your vocabulary. It's exactly the same with aroma and flavor. So you might never have tasted, I don't know, go to a different country and you nose a flower that you've never smelled before. That might then come up as a tasting and you're like, oh, I know what that is.
Yeah.
So I think you just nose and taste everything, food, different drinks, whatever, and just practice and hone it. But again, having said that, it literally doesn't matter if you feel like you're bad at tasting. There's no such thing as being bad at tasting if you're enjoying your whiskey.
Yeah.
So sometimes the least experienced guys give you the best tasting notes as well, though, because
it's so honest as well. Sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you're just like, oh, yeah, it's just like toasted marshmallows. You're like, yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
They don't know what they're meant to be looking for. They don't know the influence of the wood. They don't know that yet. And I was doing a tasting for a group of Australians up at one of the local. It was Craigston Castle, I think it was, and he came out with, that tastes like a dingo pissed in my grass. And I was just like, I don't know if that's a compliment to the whiskey or I mean, I've never tasted dingo piss or Australian grass. So I've got absolutely no idea what that is. But you're not wrong. It maybe does taste exactly like that.
You've got to credit the imagination. I think that's the thing as well, is like, what are your tasting notes for, right? So that was something that when I did various WSET courses, and I'm such an advocate for WSET. If you want to go and be nerdy about spirits, go and look up their courses. They're amazing. One of their philosophies of tasting notes, which I really actually agree with, is if you're writing tasting notes for yourself, for your friends, be as creative as you like. Like you say, the dingo piss, for example. I'm like, I have no idea what that's like.
You can imagine that on an SMWS.
Yeah, you'll be like, yeah, if you're writing it for a purpose, which might be for somebody else to pick up your tasting notes and get a sense for what that whiskey is going to taste like, for a blog, for example, for maybe a website, for you're making a recommendation for somebody, it is much more helpful to try and stick to like more universal things. So we might not know what dingo wing on Australian grass tastes like, but we all can probably get a sense of what cut grass or hay smells like. So that's just a really interesting point, I think. But I also think we just get way too hung up on tasting notes too. They're really fun, but as I say, if you're enjoying your whiskey, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Dominic said, a wee comment again on the YouTube saying, and this is something that Russell and I did at the Edinburgh Whisky Academy. We were down doing, they do a course, a diploma in nosing and tasting, which I'd highly recommend if anyone is going along this lines of just developing that ability. And yeah, it was just a quick fire, 4 or 5 things, and you taste it, you nose it, and just quick fire. And just kind of let that creative side, rather than examining the whiskey far too long, because you can overthink it and then you second guess it. You think, no, that can't be right. That can't be right. And it does work. Yeah, liberating and enlightening. A great way of putting it, Dominic, for that.
Yeah. I absolutely love that, because you're taking the pressure off, aren't you? Mm-hmm. It's almost like when you're on a deadline or something and you're trying so hard, you like paralyze yourself with stress. Whereas if you're just like, actually, there's some like bird toffee in there, and then just scribble it down the way you go, and you've started, and you're flying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the other point on that as well, I think if you have the whiskey out and you nose it, and I know people who will smell the whiskey for half an hour before tasting it. I've tried it myself, and the whiskey will change, and you'll think, oh well, actually, what I wrote down to start with is completely different to what I'm smelling now. So was I wrong to start with? Am I going to have to pour again and see if I was right? And you can totally overthink it, but of course the whiskey is going to develop in the glass as air gets into it. And all that.
And isn't that one of the most exciting things about whiskey? Like we say, it like evolves with water, it evolves with air, it evolves with all manner of other things, temperature. Like it's just fun to explore it.
Yeah. And as long as the guys are having fun and enjoying the whiskey, or even not enjoying, and again, this is something that I always impress on people, is just because you don't like a whiskey doesn't mean it's a bad whiskey. But what we need in the shop, or if we're doing a tasting, what's really interesting for us is to know is what you didn't like about the whiskey. Yeah, for us, that's just as important as what people do like. Oh, I really like, I'm just Iron American. What do you like about it? I like that minerality, that coastal, that earthiness. Okay, great. Oh, but I didn't like Old Pulteney. Okay, so in theory, quite similar whiskies, but what didn't you like about Old Pulteney? And then we could say, right, okay, let's go for a Nicknean, because that's got more of the Iron American notes than the Old Pulteney notes. Somebody comes in and says, oh, I really like a coastal whiskey. Right, that's a wide expanse. So guys, if you're coming in the shop or you're looking for whiskies, always try and find out whiskies you don't like and why you don't like it. It's really interesting to find as well. Probably more important than things that you like about whiskey.
I think that's such an interesting point, and that's something to be so aware of. Like if you're judging whiskey or writing tasting notes as well. So people always ask me, I don't know if you guys have this as well, like, oh, what's your least favorite whiskey? What don't you like? That must be a whiskey you don't like. And the only ones that I struggle with, and it doesn't mean that they're bad at all, and sometimes when I taste them, it's the influence of this cask type is so profound. I'm like, wow, that's so well made. It's things that have been like an ale or a beer cask, because for me, they just show up often as a little bit too bitter for my palate. That does not mean that they are bad whiskies. For some people, it'll be absolutely their cup of tea. And also, I think, well, if I can taste the cask influence like this, and some the blender's doing their job right, because I'm getting that character as well as the distillery character. So that was such an interesting point that's up there as well, about whiskey being science and art.
Science with benefit. Yeah.
It is. That's a good quote, actually. That's, David, I'm totally stealing that for all my tours. I'm not even going to credit you with that either. Sorry.
But we're going to emblazon it on the front window.
I love that.
Whiskey is, really, although I might not say pure science, because whiskey is pure science. It sounds a bit Glaswegian, doesn't it? Pure science.
That's pure science. There's a wee bit of magic involved. It's not all science. Definitely a bit of magic involved
with
there.
Benefits. Benefits is that. We've got Leanne from Scotch in the Bayou watching as well. I don't know if you follow Scotch in the Bayou, Kristiane. She's was over. I met her at the IWSC Academy 2019, and she's going to be doing a Blether with us on the 18th of May, just before her trip over. She's really enjoying the conversation. I love how a bottle evolves as you work your way through it, hopefully for the better. Interesting point there. Have you ever come across a whiskey that you really enjoyed to start with, and then as you got down the glass or down the bottle, you thought, actually, I'm not so keen on it anymore? Normally for me, it's the other way around. You're not so sure to start with, and it grows on you.
Yeah.
Do you know what? That's Interesting. Yeah. For me, the only time that's happened, and this is for a very boring reason, I can't think of a specific whiskey that I've like gone off, if that makes sense. But what I would say, the danger of leaving a beloved whiskey open for too long, especially if you've got that splash in the bottom. I went over to a dear friend who I haven't seen in a long time, actually. He's called Arnold. He lives in Lewis. Shout out to Arnold. And he is a retired university lecturer, and him and his wife are just absolutely lovely. And he was sharing a lot of whiskies that had open for a long time, like they had had for like maybe 20 years, like, you know, really precious things. And I do think that when a whiskey is open for too long and you've got the dregs at the bottom, they do just get so oxidized. So even if it's a really precious whiskey, something really, really special, it's just not going to keep the last bit. So yeah, make the most of them while you've got them. Don't let them turn. And just, yeah, go over the edge. So that's probably the only time I can think of where, as a bottle's gone on, it's got trickier to drink.
I have a terrible habit of leaving, especially if I've got a single cask.
Yes.
Of leaving that last bit, because I know that once it's gone, that's it, gone forever. And I do have a terrible Glenallachie in particular. I've got, there was at one point I had about 21 separate inches of Glenallachie left in bottles that I did not want to finish. I'm working my way through it now.
Think of all the shelf space you're taking up with just those tiny little wee drams at the bottom there.
Yeah. Somebody said, I read on Twitter, I think it was. I think it was either Alistair Gray finished a Glencadam, and he was really sad about it. And it was an Arna Merkin, and he was really sad about it. Somebody says, "Well, you've now got rid of that bottle. You can replace it with a new one." So looking at the bright side.
Give it like a little Uphellia send off, and then bring in the next one.
I love that. Yeah, be grateful for what was, and then welcome in the new one. Because I mean, let's face it, most of us don't have warehouses at our disposal, so storage supply is limited.
I know.
Yeah. Have you ever looked at? I think somebody asked about it right at the start. Have you ever looked at infinity bottles? Have you ever played about with that?
Oh my goodness! So no, but I honestly think that's because I don't have like the self-control to not finish off a bottle that I like. But I think it's such a wonderful and fun thing to do. And I know friends who have had endless infinity bottles and have really shared them. And they've just been such a nice way of, to your point, Kat, giving a bottle a really lovely send-off by putting the dregs into an infinity bottle.
Yeah, it's quite a cute idea, isn't it? I don't have enough whiskey for
you never tried it, Kat, no?
Well, as everybody points out, A, I don't have a massive whiskey collection, and B, I very rarely get near the bottom of the bottle, to be honest. So it hasn't happened yet, but I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say we've got 4 infinity bottles upstairs, and we don't know what to do with it. So over lockdown, we redid the tasting room, but we had shed loads of whiskey with dregs, dregs. The last couple of nips in it, 1 nip, 2 nips, because we did a lot of the virtual tastings. And, you know, say we had a tasting for 28 people and only 25 or 26 people bought one. We had the last of a bottle. Was it enough to have another tasting? So Russell and I went through a big kind of clearance, and we started pouring. So we have a sherry infinity, a complete infinity, no real rhyme or reason, and then we have a peated one as well. So we need to do something. We'll have to start putting them into blind tastings and see if people can guess what they are.
That would be so much fun, I think, to have. Just be like,
you wouldn't be able to tell them if they were right, though, because surely you've forgotten what's in them by now.
We wrote them down. We wrote everything.
Okay.
Down. Yeah. I will have to find the bits of scrap paper that they were written down on, but they're definitely written down somewhere.
That's like a sort of souped up version of Guess How Many Sweeties in the Jar, really, isn't it? It's like an adult's version of a fairground game. Guess what the whiskey is in the infinity bottle. That's very good.
But it is, I know a lot of people, and some people are very, very particular about it as well, and they take notes to the milliliter of how much they are putting in, and Yeah, it's an incredible. I think I haven't looked, but I'm sure there will be an Infinity Bottle Facebook page or something like that
I bet there
you
is.
geek out on. If there's not, I'm going to start one straight after this.
I think you should put it out there, like claim that title now.
Definitely.
Talking of bottles,
Luciana's writing that down. She's writing that down. She's like,
already stolen the idea. It's gone. That Instagram handle is going to be taken. Hashtags. And talking of bottles, have you moved on to your next dram, Kristiane? I saw you had another bottle there.
Yeah, I'm now on my third dram. So just before this, I was very lucky to be sent this, a Feshiel bottle from Bunnahabhain last year.
Wow.
It's a Calvados cask. And something I really enjoy about Bunnahabhain is that obviously they make predominantly unpeated spirit. I love smoky peaty whiskey. I'll tell you what I'm drinking next in a sec. But I just think this is such a beautiful thing. We talk about casks obviously a lot because they're incredible. And I really love the Calvados appley brandy vibe. I think it works so well with the spirit. So that's what I had in the interim. And probably to round off, because I won't be able to taste very much after this, let's face it, the new Ardbeg Barbecue, which I am obsessed with for so many reasons. I just really, really rate it. Shout out to DJ Barbecue, who surely has the best name of any person in the world ever. But I'm a vegetarian, so my barbecues broadly consist of like halloumi and corn on the cob, which I'm here for, delicious. Linda McCartney as well. But I just absolutely love this. I feel like it's Ardbeg, maybe dialed back a little bit, but I just think it's beautifully done. I love how ashy it is. I just need the summer. Again, weather's letting us down now, but I need beach barbecues to go with this whiskey, and it's just so enjoyable. And yes, that's what I'm on now.
Was it they experimented with different levels of char? Is that what this one's about?
Yes, they have. They've experimented with lots of different char levels, and their most recent one, which I have yet to taste, but I need to. They've taken the purifier off the top of their still. Is that right, for their committee release here? And the second I heard about it, I was like, oh my goodness, like what on earth? I feel like this is sort of dialed back a little bit. To your point, I think the char is like pulled back a lot of the harsher, I don't think they're harsh notes, but I think the Vapors one, I can't remember what it's called, but the one for the Feshiel this year would just be booming, and I can't wait to taste it.
There'll be some funky flavors in there, I bet.
Definitely, it will be funky for sure.
Yeah. So this time did they deliberately take off the purifier? Because remember they had the accident with the fermentation where they left the lid off the fermentation.
Yeah, no, I think this was very deliberate. But I also find this, I don't know if anyone can ever fathom this. I'm so impatient. If I'm doing something, if I'm writing something, if I'm cooking, if I'm mixing a drink, whatever, I need to know the results like ASAP. So they must have deliberately played around with the purifier, I guess somewhere between probably 5 and 8 years ago. It's going to be quite a young spirit. But imagine waiting all that length of time to see what it's going to be like. I just could not. I absolutely could not.
I know. That's the thing about whiskey. You need patience, don't you?
I know. Very impatient. Could never be a beer distiller.
We were talking last week with Johnny and Angus from the new Keith distillery. Yeah. They were both saying, you know, especially Johnny was like, I need to know what this tasted like. And they're going to have to go through that whole process of filling numerous casks with numerous different styles of new make to get their kind of signature. And I could just see him kind of almost sitting by the cask for 3 years like this, waiting for it to come through.
Imagine watching it evolving, though. That must be the most fun. Like watching your spirit evolving in the cask over the years. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, especially when it's your creation, like all your effort has gone into it. Seeing it, come to life would just be outrageously good.
I know, because they've got so many variables just now as well, because they're experimenting with the wood fire direct wash still and with different fermentation stuff. So I think there's always going to be like a settling in period with their new make spirit. You know, I think it might evolve quite a bit over the years until they either settle on what their spirit is or settle on like a range that they want to go through. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Very
Holyrood are doing that as well, doesn't it? Aren't they? They're being very experimental with what was in the cask.
Yeah,
that's fun.
Really... Sorry, Kat.
No, Kat. I was just going to say it's really fun because there's so much scope for variables now that we're looking into it. More people are seeing the value of fermentation more, going back to traditional yeast types, you know, terroir concepts of heritage grains, or, you know, direct fire and things like that. There's so much scope for, changing the quality and parameters of your new mix bitter.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you get to that place where you're not prioritizing yield, you're not prioritizing output, you're looking at flavor, you're looking at, I guess, preserving these old techniques as well. It's just really exciting.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely a change in the consumer, isn't there? They were moving away from that sort of uniform consistency of just high volume and collectible, sets to more the distillate and how we got to that, and the quality factors go into that. So it's an exciting time to be into whiskey.
Absolutely.
And I guess it's not just I think for me as well, what underlines the importance of this experimentation is it's not just being relied on the newer or the independent or the smaller distilleries. When you see people like Glenfiddich taking out a wee experimental range, showcasing different cask style, moving away from the norm, you kind of think, well, maybe there is something here. These guys are trying it. That experimental range from Glenfiddich was a big step away from the norm for them. And a lot of it was marketing. I guess was to try and, as we mentioned before, people overlook Glenfiddich because they've kind of got used to it, and they wanted to try and drag that people back into it by doing beer casks or doing the ice wine casks and not cider casks, but effectively cider casks. Just doing so. Even the big guys are looking at experimenting and doing something that's different off the beaten track, then it's a good stead for the whiskey drinker, because there will be people who will look at a new distillery like a Nick Nee and say, "Oh, it's too young. I won't like that. It's far too young for me." And he says, "Well, here's a 12-year-old experimental cask instead, and they can try that."
I do hope we're getting to the point where people get less preoccupied with age and more interested in these other things that we've just outlined, because I think if you are too preoccupied with it doesn't have an age statement, or it's under, to what you were saying earlier, Kat, under 18 or under 15, then you're missing out, quite frankly. There's so much good whiskey that's young and youthful and vibrant, and it is different, but that's part of the joy of it.
Every whiskey has its sort of cycle, its life cycle. Not every whiskey is going to be good at 12 years. Not every whiskey is going to be good at 18 years. Some whiskey is fantastic at 3 years. Yeah, so like you say, you are missing out if you're just stuck to an age. Definitely. Age is but a number.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Well, Mike's going to go by non-age statement from now on. You're not going to turn 40. You're just going to go by non-age statement, aren't you?
I'm declaring myself non-age statement. Yeah.
Good.
Absolutely. I will not get older. Unfortunately, I won't get any younger either.
But what's important is it isn't disclosed, so no one else will know.
Well, Kaz just told everyone, so.
Right.
It was talking of 40th birthday. It's happy birthday to Chris from Little Brown Dog. It's his 40th birthday today.
Happy birthday, Chris!
If you are watching, not sure if you watch. I know Andrew kind of dips in and out from time to time. And this is the one time I'm drinking bloody Little Brown Dog, and he won't be watching. But
you can watch it on playback.
Happy birthday to Chris, and congratulations on the birth of Poppy. His daughter came along last week.
Congratulations!
A week ago yesterday, I think. So
very happy.
Exciting.
Amazing.
So Andrew got a puppy, and Chris got a poppy. So
never to be confused.
Never to be confused. No, between the two. Have you tried the Little Brown Dogs releases, Kristiane?
I have not tasted them, but I've definitely written about them, as in news that they're out. So yeah, they're very much on my radar, and very much really exciting as well, because it's beyond whiskey, right? There's a gin as well, and from what I understand,
part of the release this time was, I think we mentioned Calvados earlier on, so they've got this Calvados, but fully matured in a white port cask. So
interesting. Like, that would be really fascinating to taste.
Beautiful, and I'm probably pour that next, since it's in my hand now. But yeah, really nice, really fresh, really summery, grapey, beautiful little dram.
And I think as well, that's such a great example of just innovation coming through left, right, and centre. And got to be open to taste these things, because otherwise, you're missing out.
So if not whiskey, what would you reach for if you thought I'm not in the mood for a whiskey tonight? What would be your first port of call?
Oh, so outside of spirits, I'm really into Austrian wines at the moment. I feel like they're really interesting. The reds are a little bit lighter. The whites are like super crisp. So yeah, we've got a really nice wine bar around the corner in Brighton called 10 Green Bottles. If anyone is in Brighton ever, go and check them out. I'm just looking at my drink shelf. Oh goodness, an agave spirit, something like a mezcal or an interesting tequila for sure. So yeah, I'd probably either go wine or agave in this moment. But I would drink most things, not fussed.
Tequila's getting really popular, or mezcal is getting really popular as well, isn't it?
I just think they're beautiful spirits. And I think for so long over in the UK, obviously, geography being what it is, it was only really the big players that were able to get their products over here. And now the market's developed in such a way that we're starting to see the more niche producers, particularly on the mezcal side, more sort of ancestral mezcals, like really interesting things. And they're just so different and so much fun. And if you love like a funky peated whiskey, definitely go and have a play with mezcal, because I think you'll really like what you find.
Yeah, and people that there is a distinct difference between tequila and mezcal, isn't it? It's not just a regional thing. There's also that kind of, because the agave is smoked in mezcal effectively, isn't it?
Yeah, so typically, and I use this word a lot with agave spirits because there's all kinds of rules and regulations that I'm not as cross as I should be. But yeah, generally speaking, tequila has to be made from Blue Weber agave. It has to be cooked in brick ovens. Mezcal can be made from all manner of different varietals of agave, so you get those different flavor from that as well, but it's cooked in these pits sort of lined with stones, so that's where you get some of those smoky notes from. It's almost where the agaves like hit the hot rock.
So guys, and I guess we're kind of a little bit naive to tequila and mezcal in Scotland, because tequila, you think Jose Cuervo, you think Sauza, you think shots at the bar, lime and salt, and three of them, and it's either to kickstart your night or to finish your night, and that's all tequila is about. But you get a really good tequila in your glass, treated like you do with a good whiskey. Just sip, savor. So complex, so much good flavors in there. Have you tried any mezcal or tequila finished whiskies?
Yes. I think that, I'm not going to name names, I think it's definitely a cask type that can work with whiskey. What was really interesting for me was, it was only in, 2019 that the SWA changed its rules?
Yeah, I think so,
yeah, for some of these more esoteric. Yeah, no, relatively recently. And I think what we're going to see now, because obviously producers were playing around with that before that rule came in. They were like lying in wait for the rules to change, then release stuff.
It's amazing how quickly after the rule change.
So I think that some of the ones that came out initially were super interesting, and I'm really glad that I got to taste them. But I'm not sure that they had maybe like the vatting or the marrying, or maybe like I think maybe producers just didn't know the casks all that well. But now, because we've had that bit of lag time, I think producers are getting to know what their spirit does with these casks. And now we're beginning to see some really exciting things come onto the market that taste that bit more integrated, maybe I should say. But yeah, I'm really excited. And I think that was a really smart rule for the SWA for a number of reasons, because obviously producers all around the world who aren't subjected to the same rules and restrictions, which I don't think are a bad thing, they could innovate so much more. And now Scotch can innovate on a bit more of a level playing field. And I think that's only a good thing as far as like flavours concerned.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm just going to say a quick cheerio to James, who's heading out for tonight. And a hello to Matthew, who's jumped on for a wee bit. So
one in, one out.
Goodbye and hello to both of you guys. Awesome. Kat, what's your tequila experiences? The ones that you're allowed to broadcast on live?
I don't really have any tequila experiences. I definitely haven't tried proper tequila, like as we were saying, the decent one that's not just the shots at the end nights. It's on my list of things that I need to do. So no, I have very limited tequila experience, I'm afraid. Mezcal experience also very limited there too. I don't even know if I've had whiskey out of a mezcal cask, to be honest.
That was my next question. What's your mezcal experience? But hey,
I think just as limited as my tequila. I'm trying to think if I've tried a whiskey in a mezcal cask, but I don't even think I have.
I'm not sure I've tried one in a mezcal cask. I'd be really interested in that because, like you were saying, with people using peat as like almost like a seasoning, like with a peat cask rather than peat whiskey, I think you could get really interesting things from mezcal. But yeah, I think for a starting point for anyone wanting to get into tequila or mezcal, go check out Ocho, OCHO, because not expensive, really well made, really lovely on the tequila side. And there are so many on the mezcal side. I think honestly, if you just have a Google and have a look, Del Maguey is probably one of the more accessible ones. But yeah, just go check out and have a play.
Yeah.
How did you spell that? Sorry.
Ocho is OCHO and Del Maguey. I'm gonna have to write it. DLMAGUEY. Yeah, definitely great starting points.
We'll have to get that into it. Definitely see more interest in tequila. People coming in and asking about it, and so yeah, no, I need to increase my knowledge on that for sure.
Very well, we're on a whiskey chat, and I'm like agave spirits, but there we go. We move.
We're not all whiskey. We're not all whiskey.
Exactly.
Sometimes you need a break from whiskey. Yes, you heard that here, but you do need a break, and that's why I've just poured this lovely Calvados, and it's incredible. I've had this one before, and it's got such a nice kind of oaked white wine note to it, and there's an appley kind of like a sour apple, like a cooking apple kind of sharpness, but it's just to smell. And I know I said about 20 minutes ago about smelling something for half an hour before drinking it, but it has got that kind of nose that you can just sit and smell. And I'm not sure, I don't know enough about Calvados to hazard a guess as to whether this is natural 47.8%, whether that's a natural cask strength or if that's maybe a bit cut.
It's delving into the depths of my like level 3 WSC knowledge. I imagine just because it's of the inexact ABV, it probably is natural, but don't know.
An unusual choice if they brought it down to a point deliberately, wouldn't it? I mean, that'd be literally sat there with your beaker.
You know how geeky Andrew is.
That's also a fair point.
There might be a hidden meaning behind that as well. So their Navy strength gin that they bottled at 57.8% or something is because that's their line of latitude that the distillery sits on. So, it wouldn't surprise me.
The Ardmore one, was that not to do with Colin McRae's?
55.5%, yeah.
Yeah, that was the natural one. They always said that if they found a natural ABV at 55.5, it would be a Colin McRae one, wouldn't it? Is that like his car number or something? Am I being a girl? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know about rally driving.
Well, if you're being a girl, so am I, because I wasn't sure what the connection was either. And I'm going to get ridiculed by Andrew the next time I see him for saying that.
Let's just say it was his number.
Definitely not being a girl, just not knowing about cars, which, yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. It's something definitely to do with rally driving. I'm glad
you said it first, because if I said that first, then there would have been all hell breaking loose.
Yeah.
I know, but we're talking about like not like gender and whiskey, and I've just gendered cars. So
you did.
Yeah.
It's easily done. It's so interesting. I mean, like, not to go off on too much of a tangent on this, but yeah, I think we're also, I don't know, we're also brought up in an environment that is so gendered that it's very easy to slip into it. So yeah,
I know it's just so easy to say things like like come on guys, like everybody's saying stop you. Yeah. No, I never say that because I'm raising 3 sons, so I never say man up.
Yeah, exactly. It's so interesting, isn't it? Like it's also internalized, all of this stuff, and then when you actually like sit down and you're like, oh, I'd never say man up because that's actually like really problematic. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
But girls know cars too. There we go. That's the bottom line. Is they do.
A lot of girls do. This girl doesn't, but a lot of girls know cars.
I think the 3 of us, regardless of gender, don't know about cars.
Let's just call it that. Whiskey, yes. Cars, no. But that's fine. We don't need to.
And also, you should mix the 2 anyway. So there we are.
That's a very valid point, actually.
Yeah. Very good point. Let's not mix. So one thing we always say: we don't mix sport, we don't mix politics, and we don't mix religion. So we shouldn't mix cars either,
Exactly.
or flying, because the label on the Calvados is the wing design of, if I remember right, a Tornado fighter plane. Again, something for Andrew to ridicule me with if I've got that wrong. But I would never mix flying with drinking either.
No.
So 555 is the sponsorship deal with Subaru.
Okay, that's cool.
That is a person who knows.
Well done, Dave. Excellent.
Well remembered.
And Dave has also meant, just going back to tequila, he has a bottle of Yua tequila, which he bought a couple of years ago, but he did try it before buying.
Yeah. Amazing. I think it's so interesting, the crossover between like spirits categories and what is like a happy crossover and what isn't. But yeah, really interested to see how tequila goes among whiskey lovers.
Yeah. And I guess, going on to that kind of what we've been talking about all night almost is that experimentation and opening your mind to, and it's not just about whiskey. If you're open your mind to a lot of great whiskeys, why not other dark spirits or spirits in general? Drums, very, very similar kind of makeup in that cask maturation, and tequila, and open that all up and have fun with it.
Go experiment.
Exactly. Broaden your horizons.
Absolutely.
Have we got all the questions? I think we're done, aren't we?
Do we have any further questions from the guys at home? Do you have a favorite Subaru or anything like that we need to talk about?
Definitely not. That's so funny.
What's the name of your cat before we go?
Oh, she's called Toast. She's called Toast.
Toast.
Yeah. Oh. She's a little ginger girl cat, and everyone thinks she's, go back to gender, everyone thinks she's a boy, I think because of her energy a little bit. I don't know. And also it's very unusual to have an all ginger girl cat, but yeah, she's called Toast and she's wonderful.
See, our girl cat's called Billy because when my oldest son was 3 years old, he asked Santa for a black and white cat with a pink nose called Billy. So we found a black and white cat with a pink nose. She's a girl, but she's called Billy. So.
I love that so much. That's adorable.
Yeah, she's a very old cat now, but she still catches loads of mice. But yeah,
Grand Dame.
Yeah.
So before we go, Kristiane, what can we expect to see from you in the how can people follow you? Where can they find you? And two, what have you got coming up? Article wise, what can we read from you?
That's so exciting. So I'm at Kristiane Sherry on Instagram, which is, I would say, the easiest bit, but obviously have a very confusingly spelled name. And then things I'm working on at the moment. So I'm going to be writing another chapter for the Malt Whisky Yearbook, which I'm so excited about. So that's going to be the next few months. I'm working on some very fun and different things for Whisky Magazine. I'll leave it like that. You have to wait to see later in the year.
Cool.
And yeah, there's a lot coming up. I'm doing, it's just a whole mix of like B2B and consumer writing, doing a bit of presenting. But yeah, I would say the Malt Whisky Yearbook, I'm looking at, we talked about it a little bit earlier, kind of like the revival of like heirloom barley varietals, traditional ways of producing, and what that looks like today. So I'm so excited to delve into that. Yeah, it'll be really, really great.
We'll have to get you back on when you've done that. I can geek out over heritage barley.
Yes, please, can we? I will come armed with all different kinds of
Yes, you can. You really can.
Also water. I've written down about water, so I'm going to do a deep dive into water and whiskey off the back of this chat. So thank you to whoever asked that question, because you've got the cogs going in my brain on that one.
That's amazing. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So well, thank you very much. We will let you go. I know you've got places to be tonight.
We're off to the pub. I mean, yeah, it's a Thursday. It's pub o'clock. But honestly, thank you so much for having me on a Blether. so fun. And yeah, tasting some lovely whiskies, just getting to know you both a bit more. Thank you. Honestly, it's been the best way to spend a Thursday.
Or kickstart a Thursday night, even.
Yeah, I mean, we could look at that way. We'll see what happens. The night is yet young.
Absolutely. And if you're ever up in the area for anything, give us a bell and swing in past, or we'll come and meet you, and we'll have a drama in person, which would be great.
Oh my goodness, 100%. We have to make this happen. It's been so much fun. I really, really can't wait. So exciting.
Good stuff.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Kristiane. Guys, before you all start to head off, next week we have Alison Milne from Crafty Maltsters, kind of on the production side, finding out a little bit more about the barley and the malt and all that kind of interesting. So if you are a geeky in that side of things, that's going to be really cool. So join in again next week for that. I think Crafty Maltsters, for guys who don't know about the Whisky Ambassador program, the Whisky Ambassador Advanced is kind of a very studious type exam for the whiskey geek, and Crafty Maltsters was part of their course this week. They just ran, I think they only do one a year, and they're down in Glasgow. So that's going to be really interesting. So if you are interested in expanding your knowledge, next week would be a really good time to join in. But for everyone at home, everyone joining in, maybe watching a recording, thank you very much. If you guys have any questions, feel free to stick it in the chat. We'll pick up on that, and hopefully Kristiane will be happy to answer maybe questions that come retrospectively.
Yeah, absolutely. Ping them on through, and yeah, we'll carry on the chat, because sharing a dram with everyone is like the best thing to do.
Great
Keep
stuff.
it rolling.
Thank you, guys. Kristiane, thank you very much. Enjoy your night in the pub. We will see you, or speak to you certainly very soon. And guys, good night, and slange you back.
Cheers. Bye.